I'm just throwing this out here. Everybody always says that we lost everything, like these guys. Oh, they lost their wings. Whales lost their legs and went back to the water. Snakes lost their legs. Ichthyosaurs went back into the ocean. When do we look forward? Things gain. It doesn't lose. Like these guys. These guys are most likely, this is a theory, but I'm willing to bet that terror bird, it's a flightless bird, is closer related to these guys, theropods, like the large T-Rex. It's basically a flightless bird. They don't have feathers, but these are going to gain feathers. And as the being gets smaller, theropods, they're going to gain feathers and gain wings. They're going to get fuzzier and featherier and gain wings. Everybody's saying that, although T-Rex had wings, he didn't have wings. They were going to develop into wings. And as they get smaller, they're going to get fuzzier. Like this terror bird. Freaking huge still. But it doesn't fly. And as they got smaller, they started gaining more and more feathers. And this is because they are so small, now they're more prone to being eaten. So they have to have a mechanism for survival, which is flying. These guys didn't need them yet. They were already the monster kingpins. The Spinosaur. The beasts, big theropods. Nothing's really gonna take them down. These are vestigial because they're gonna gain. I mean, this is millions of years ago. Things only get better. It doesn't go back. Millions of years ago, vestigial versus now. Birds, wings. It's self-explanatory in a logical sense, but they tell us everything's back, and they shove it down our throat so much we start believing it. It's like nobody wants to look forward. And ultimately, the flightless birds didn't evolve until between what they're claiming around 90 to 70 million years ago, and diverged around 45 million years ago. And this big dude right here existed around 62 to 1.8 million years ago. Now, eagles evolved around 36 million years ago. I'm basically just trying to explain the Big Bang of birds. So the big theropods, as they got smaller, these dwarf genes, they got featherier, fuzzy and feathery. And the smaller they got, they gained flight. And around the time that the flying raptors evolved, a bunch of little small, tinier raptors, which were basically other species of birds, were evolving feathers and flying around too, because there's going to be a bunch of genes that are passed that are mutated, that give rise to animals and hybridizing, which gives rise to species. And with all this clean and consistent evidence that, in my opinion, I mean, this is just my theory, but it seems pretty damn logical, because I'm not using any crazy wild ideas. I'm using the same data everyone else is using, and I'm getting a different freaking picture. Okay, now I'm just throwing this out here. Forced evolution, all right? Now, every time there's an event, it gives rise to new animals, because animals have to adapt. They have to overcome, they have to find a way, or they die. And this does kill a lot of animals, but a lot more come from those ashes, essentially. So, whenever an event happens, animals are more likely to start mutating and passing genes and mating to survive. And that will create hybrids and other mutations and life forms, essentially. Now, right here, it says one cannot force natural selection as a forced natural selection. Technically, yes and no. Because when an event happens, natural selection starts taking place. That's when animals die and animals survive. Natural selection. And they call that artificial selection. So technically, they have natural selection and artificial selection as the same thing, because natural events force evolutionary changes in animals. I'm just saying it's one of these ways we've opinionated things to the Tower of Babel, where pretty much nobody can understand shit. Basically, I call this a gainer. As we go forward, we're flipping backwards. So as we move forward, we keep looking back. And that's where I believe the term a gainer comes from when it comes to diving. And to take a dive, ooh, damn, I didn't even think of that until just now. So I'm just saying the bird is basically the universal chicken. It's on everything on Earth's snack menu. Now, if it's big enough to kill a human, it's typically flightless. An ostrich and emu could probably kill a human. It definitely hurt them pretty damn bad. But anything small enough that we could get our hands on it, even an eagle. An eagle could probably scratch a human's head up, but if a human got a hold of it, we could break an eagle's neck. So these guys are susceptible to being eaten also. mainly by owls. Again, they're cathartidae, so they're raptors, but they fly because, again, this guy is susceptible. A human could kill it hand to hand. One thing in evolution is about being on the snack menu or not, and ultimately trying not to. Also, it's one reason the dodo is an extinct bird, because it was flightless and it got real small. Animals that are real small, they end up on the menu and they end up extinct because they can't populate faster than their extinction rate. Now, this guy may be flightless, but he lives in a very cold region. Now, they are on the menu of certain animals, but only very few. So they can populate faster than they get eaten. Because even though they're flightless and usually on a menu, anywhere else in the world, there's not a lot of stuff in the world there that can eat them. Polar bears, seals, whales, sharks, basically. They're not on the menu of a lot of animals. I mean, they're definitely not on mine. I've never ate penguin. See, even the ostrich comes from an ancestor 40 million years ago, and it's around 20 million years ago, at least. I'm willing to bet it came from a terror bird. And an ostrich isn't an animal that you could take hand to hand if it wanted to get vicious on you. I mean, you could probably take it, but you're going to get hurt pretty bad, maybe even killed. Whereas, like I was saying, an eagle probably wouldn't kill you, it just hurts you really bad. But if you're smart enough, you could kill an eagle pretty simple, hand to hand, with a few cuts. See, even the moa lived about 10 million years ago, 11, something around there in the Miocene. I'm not sure exactly how to say this, but the kakapo, it's a small, non-flying bird. There are only 197 living individuals. So the reason why we don't have many small flightless birds is because they're on a freaking menu. Like, for example, the dodo bird, the one extinct, you know, we killed it, along with everything else. Flightless cormorant. This guy, he's kind of small and he can't fly, but he can swim. So he has a larger margin of survival since he has two ecosystems, land and water. He can make do with that over land and air. But I'm just saying, these guys are still pretty endangered. About 1,500 living individuals. So through natural selection, essentially the flightless birds are weeded out and smaller flying ones take their place. And the special thing about ducks, they're masters of 3 ecosystems. And their population's 38.9 million. It's no wonder the eagle's our guy, man. He has 66 chromosomes. But typically birds have 80. Hawks have 68. Cassowary, it's a large bird, 92. Now the ostrich has 80. The emu has 82. The griffin vulture, 66 chromosomes. Now one might say, well, chromosomes don't mean much. Well, they kind of do when they're in the same family. This is where you're going to get a mutated potential for a gene. Basically, it means they have a malleable karyotype. There's room for evolution. Evolutionary elasticity, you might say. Now, in general, bird karyotypes have a high diploid number of 2n of typically around 80 chromosomes that are divided into macro and micro chromosomes. Now, birds and reptiles are the only ones that have these. Mammals do not have micro chromosomes, and my theory on this, anybody want to hear, I'll throw it on another video. This one's kind of long. I'm just saying, I know a lot about the macro and the micro and fundamental relativity. So I'm just saying, flightless, small birds are scavenged. So that's why we don't find many fossils, and that's why they're kind of thinned out. And the only fossils we really do find are small flying ones or big, large, beastly, non-flying